Well, hello everybody. Welcome back. All right, I just got part 1 uploaded about how things had been for a while after facing termination from Wegmans and before landing job at BJ's. So now let's do part 2. And so to start part 2, so after initially interviewing at Lowe's and stuff, there was this some thing I had gotten this I had remembered getting this email from these folks about asking, like, quote, you know, people that are like looking for people, just straight up looking for people that maybe are without a job and maybe need money and stuff. So it was asking, like, quote, do you need like do you need work? And then it offer that where then it offers this thing offers this thing offers this thing where, like, you make sales online, that they send you like this check to deposit into your financing. um, and then I had initially kind of took that seriously, but it probably wasn't such a good but it probably wasn't such a good idea. luckily not because luckily not because it did anything harmful to financing, but because it got people around here quite worried, and quite worried, and quite worried, quite worried, quite worried, and stuff, quite worried, quite worried, quite worried, quite worried, and quite worried, and quite worried and stuff. You know, the thing of it was, I remembered getting it in the mail, and I remembered it was something for like 1,800 something. And so later on in the week, that week, I had remembered kind of initially letting myself deposit into my savings and stuff, and that was all right for the time being. But then I had left to know for all my people here. The problem was that it was obviously not very legit. Obviously, not really a very legitimate situation, or a very legit situation in the first place to begin with. Let's put it that way. So, a week later, what we ended up doing, the thing is it's kind of looked as more like a scam and stuff. And that reminds me, I know when I had brought things up before to some of my people, like, oh, well, some of you may have seen, like, where people have offered, like, online jobs and stuff. But the thing is, a lot of people like us tend to, kind of look at that more as kind of something that's kind of too good to be true, kind of just too good to be true to take that too good to be true to take that so serious. And every one of those things cost money, obviously, to get into. And even with that, people would be concerned about scamming and stuff, scamming and scamming and scamming and scamming and stuff. The main reason why I let myself take you know, that one situation where I'd gotten the check in the mail seriously was just because even after initially interviewing at Lowe's, I felt like chances of being accepted there was going to be kind of slim, which it kind of was after all. You know, um, so of course when we of course with that check situation that was more like scam and stuff. Of course, we ended up having to go to the bank, go to the go to the bank, go to the bank and temporarily close out, you know, current account that had been active at the time till we could get things straight and settled. Big lesson learned was should really never take any of that stuff serious, because in the end it's really all looked at as, like we said, scam and stuff. One of my other people here, I remembered that morning, had came in and asked about what the deal was with that, and they asked, like, quote, are you stressing out about money and stuff, you know? When I had gotten into how, you know, a couple weeks prior, the Tops job situation, you know, how I had kind of, you know, kind of denied that, but how people are concerned, and how people are concerned that it's been a while since Buffalo Bills, since 2018, Buffalo Bills camp 2018 had ended, so had been without a job for well over a month. And they said, right, yeah, I know, you need a job, you need a job, right, I know, you need, right, I know, you, right, I know, you need, right, I know, right, I know, you need a job, but so, but so, but so, you know, but so, the fact is, you know, we didn't really have any of that situation that we had to get into dealing with for quite a long time, for 9.5 years. We had been finally we had been fi- we had been before the situation of facing termination from Wegmans it came. We had been almost like financially stable for like, you know, at least 7.5 years, maybe even more like 8 years, maybe even the past. We were like financially stable for like you know, they had been financially stable for like at least the past 7.5 years, maybe even the past 8 years. It was only 1 year, only 1 year, only 1 year during my time with Wegmans that I had had a little bit of a shake up financially. During my third year with Wegmans, maybe some days, maybe a later day down the road, maybe I'll kind of get into that a little bit. Other than that, ever since then, I I had I had then I had then managed to pull it together financially for the past at least 7.5 years, maybe even up to 8 years and stuff. So you see, just knowing that, you know, that whole time hadn't really had things had to get into much of any situation of everything falling apart financially up until then. It was just kind of, you know, it was just discouraging, you know. Now that I got job at BJ, now that I got job at BJ, now that I got job, 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 now that I got job at BJ's and stuff. Now, definitely, financial situation is definitely heading in a much more positive direction. And now, pretty well to the point where we pulled it together at this point, which is good. You know, so now we're back. So now we've got financing back, got financing, got financing, got financing, got financing, got financing back on track and stuff. Got financing back on track. Got financing back on track and stuff. You know, you see the biggest thing I've been going through mind, of course. Biggest thing I'm going through mind first, right after facing termination from Wegmans, you know, obviously was at first, well, everything will change. Everything will change now. Now things are getting better now, obviously, but so that's where stuff was coming from with that. Eventually, a couple weeks later, mid-October, I had initially gotten a buzz about going in for interview at the BJ's Wholesale Club location that is over on Bellwood Drive, over by Route 390 Expressway. Fact is, when I had given RTS, public transportation a buzz, seeing about how much during the week they go there, I had at first assumed that it was an everyday deal, but the fact is, you can't underestimate certain parts of the area. And it's a good thing that I had called and asked, because I did, of course, find out that there was a catch. Public transportation only goes there Monday through Friday. So initially, I remembered going in for interview there about mid-October, and they understood about how public transportation only goes there Monday through Friday deal. But the fact was, the problem was, they said, unfortunately, they can't consider somebody for employment there unless they can give at least a little bit of weekend time. Doesn't have to be both days, doesn't have to be both Saturday and Sunday. Even if you decide you just want to give up, even if you decide you just want to show, even if you decide you just want to give some weekend, even if you decide you just want to give some weekend time on Saturday, even if you just want to give some weekend time, even if you just want to give some weekend, even if you just want to give some weekend time on Saturdays and have your Sundays off, So of course, didn't come through there, obviously, at that BJ's Wholesale Club location, being that it's only in the bus line during the week, Monday through Friday. Then the day after that was when I got the email from the Henrietta BJ's Wholesale Club location saying, what I remembered it saying was, quote, we have looked through a lot of your online application. We are very impressed with your background, and we could very well have an opportunity for you. So, with that said, for that, we invite you to this hiring event on the 23rd of October, 2018. And so that's where relief really, that's where we were really getting the feeling that relief may be in sight. And it was soon enough after that. So like went in for the hiring event, interview number 1 then, the 23rd of October 2018, towards kind of near the end of last year, near the end of last year, near the end of 2018. Then on a hunch the day after, got buzz for going in for a second interview, got buzz for going in for second, got buzz for going in, for second interview, which we ended up doing later on in the week that week. Then week after went in for drug screening. You remember the vlog? You remember my preview vlogs about my orientation and stuff. So you remember the rest. So you remember the rest. You remember the rest. You remember the rest. So that was the end of the working. That was the end of my working hiatus then. Thank God. That was the end of my working hiatus. 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 That was the end of my working hiatus then. So now that we're back in the so now that we're back in the now that we're back in the now that we're back now that we're back in the upscale now that we're back in the now that we're back in the upscale with that. Moving forward, you know, moving forward, I'd like to maybe next year maybe go on a cruise maybe next year. You know, I'd like to maybe go on a cruise. I'd like to maybe go on a cruise next year. I'd like to maybe go. I'd like to maybe go on a cruise. I'd like to maybe go on a. I'd like to maybe go on a cruise next year. So maybe a year from now. A year from now. So I'll just share a little bit more about like when it came to like the restaurants and stuff. Olive Garden, Red Robin, and you know, even kind of Dave and Buster's, and more so kind of Texas Roadhouse as well. I had heard great things about, you know, I had read reviews on Indeed, and stuff, Indeed about other people's experiences working at those places, and it all sounded great. I knew Olive Garden sounded kind of like family kind of orientated stuff too, and stuff. After you'd been at this one place for so long, where you've been, you know, you got treated well and stuff, you know, you tend to look more towards these other places where you think you would be able to really have fun while you're working and get treated well, get treated well, get treated good, get treated well, get treated good. You know, so I was just kind of looking more in the way, you know. So as far as when it went to with tops and stuff all went, when it went about, you know, like what would be involved in like, you know, the availability adjustment situation or removing a day from availability goes and stuff, and they said that that would kind of be all in the store manager's hands at tops. Stuff like that was kind of just like, you know, felt like you were going to be more like a slave there, like, you know, it's going to be very hard. It was going to be very hard to, you know, work such things out, you know. It would all be out of your hands, you know. I mean, you know, initially it's the same. Initially it's the same anywhere, but you know, BJ's on the other hand, at least the Henrietta location over on J. Scuddy Boulevard, and border of Henrietta over on J. Scuddy Boulevard, Henrietta location there. Definitely things definitely seem a good bit more lenient, you know. Yes, of course, you know, at least, you know, to start, it's required, willing to give at least a little bit of weekend time, and at this point in time, and of course also backtracking to the hiring event and second interview, when both days they asked about what availability I'd be willing to give, and I had ultimately said and gave them 8:30 a.m. 8:30 a.m., 9 a.m., 8:30 a.m. in the morning, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m., 8:30 a.m., 8:30 a.m., 8:30 a.m., 8:30 a.m., 8:30 a.m. in the morning till 6 p.m. in the evening, Saturdays. And that ultimately was all cool. And the guy who did second interview with me a few days later had said, well, that's a pretty good availability. I don't know if you can hear our dog in the background. This is around the time when a bunch of our uh, lifetime assistants LAI workshop people usually come home. They're in this situation where they have a young guy from where another house kind of on the other side of town of Greece where public transportation does not go to. So they worked it all out where a couple of his staff people would bring him here every day during the week, Monday through Friday, and he would just pick up public transportation system here. And so probably right now what's going on is, you know, just got home, just got back, or his couple of staffing people that brought him here earlier have come to get him, have come to get him, and you know, our dog. I wouldn't say our dog. Our dog doesn't exactly like is not exactly like that. Doesn't like a lot of people, but our dog doesn't. Well, in some ways, our dog doesn't like a great deal of people. I mean, he likes quite a bit. I mean, he likes quite a bit of people. At least the people that he sees regularly. People that doesn't see frequently enough. Is a lot more sensitive to people that doesn't see as frequently or doesn't see often enough. But anyway, getting back to the rest of BJ's stuff. They had second interview and said the same thing. Said the same thing. Said the same thing. Said the same thing about availability being showing willingness to do 8:30 a.m. in the morning till 8:30 p.m. 8:30 p.m. 8:30 p.m. 8:30 p.m. 8:30 p.m. in the evening. 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 8:30 p.m. in the evening, Monday through Friday, and 8:30 a.m. in the morning till to 6 p.m. in the evening Saturdays. And the guy who had interviewed me then had said, well, that's a pretty good availability. And, you know, I had ultimately said how, you know, I understand, you know, weekends are when you do gist of your business or when you do a good bit or most of your business or even do a lot of your business. And I completely understand that. And which was probably kind of good. Which was probably kind of good to be fair about that, you know. And my job coach that went with me that day had said at the end when it was all over and all done with, said, I'm kind of glad that sounds like that should work out, because if you say you really wish to have your Sundays to yourself, I want you to be able to have your Sundays to yourself. And so it's all able to work out that way. You know, so far in the first almost 4 months that I've been at BJ's Wholesale Club location in the border of Henrietta over on J. Scuddy Boulevard, so far I've worked 3 Saturdays. I haven't worked every Saturday, but I've worked at least 3 so far. And of course, definitely many more to come. obviously, and stuff. I'll cover just a little bit more about, you know, the way I felt things were with Tops. I just felt like things were just going to be like I just felt like you know, after you've been at a place that for oh so long where you get treated well and stuff and pretty flexible with scheduling and availability, working out wise, you know, you tend to be more attached to those kind of settings or places where you know you get treated well at, or you know you sound like you can have fun at. That's where the restaurant Olive Garden, Texas Roadhouse, and Red Robin situation was coming from. Knowing that we were more than likely going to get denied there, and that we were most, well, not necessarily denied, but more turned down every time in the restaurant settings. Knowing that that's not necessarily where we have a ton, that's not necessarily where I have a ton of my education in, or, well, really where I have a whole ton of my work experience in, I should say. You know, and also the Gates Buffalo Road Tops, not a bad place, but you know, just, you know, smelling like, you know, stuff, smelling like, like smelling like cigarette smoke and stuff there in parts, in parts, in parts. Didn't seem the most glamorous. That was another thing too. People just seemed more strict there, you know. And also too, another thing too, Tops a while ago had gone bankrupt. So there are a good bit of stores that had ended up closing. So, you know, not a whole lot has been falling apart with Tops, but good bit of stuff here and there had been kind of falling apart with Tops a little bit. So, and you know, another thing that my dad and company had said after I had finally landed a job at BJ's, Henrietta BJ's, Henrietta, 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 Henrietta BJ's Wholesale Club location. My dad had, I remembered saying, after the top situation, I wasn't sure any other job opportunity. I wasn't sure any other jobs were gonna come up anytime too soon. But got lucky with BJ's. Again, I'm doing this vlog and this video for you for you all viewers and for you all folks out there and you all viewers out there. But I'm also kind of doing it so that maybe definitely next year and a couple years from now, even a couple years and even a few years from now, I can watch this stuff over and over again and remind myself, you know, situation was definitely, like I said in part one I just did just a little while ago, situation was definitely a tough situation. Definitely not one anyone, especially like myself, definitely not one anyone like myself or any of my other people, you know, around here, any of my other people, period, would want to have to repeat very soon at all. So definitely good to keep that stuff in mind, that we're now over the worst of that at this point. So keep it that, do everything you can to keep it that way. Do everything possible to keep it. Do everything possible to keep it that way. And the last thing too, I thought I'll share with you, when we had got to the final stage of submitting BJ's availability and stuff during orientation, and we had talked about the having Monday through Saturday deal, and we asked if that was all right, and they ultimately said yes. They ultimately said yeah, that's fine, and they ultimately said yeah, that'll be just fine. They ultimately said yeah, that'll They ultimately said yeah. They ultimately said yeah, that'll be just fine. They ultimately said yeah. They ultimately said yeah. They ultimately said yeah, that'll be just fine. They ultimately said yeah, that'll be just fine. And you know, time when I had done all my BJ's orientation and stuff, it was, you know, when my 34th birthday was coming up, and I had talked about, you know, I knew probably best to kind of, for now, I started out seasonal before I became permanent, before I became permanent and year round. Before I became permanent and year round. I just tried to have my instinct be kind of maybe keep the taking time off to a minimum. And they said, well, we'll go ahead and give you the day off of your birthday. And they said, we're pretty flexible. 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 We're pretty flexible around here. So, stuff like that, yeah. And I'm only giving you this much detail, so I'm doing this all for you folks and all you viewers and stuff, but I'm also doing this so that I can keep on watching this all myself too, and playing this back myself all too as well, a year from now, and a couple years from now, and a few years from now, and so forth. And remind myself that we're in a fair situation at this point, We want to be able to do everything we can to keep it that way. And got a pretty good thing going again now, so do everything we can to keep it that way. Doing everything we can to keep it that. Do everything we can to keep it that way. One last thing I just remembered. Like I told you in my part 1 of this, how the other concern about working at places like Olive Garden and Dave & Buster's, Texas Roadhouse, and Red Robin was, the female employees, and stuff there. A lot of high school, college age people can work there. And after the issues I had with TC Hooligans from a couple years ago with taking it too far with the Valentine's Day cards 2 years ago, and how a lot of my people here said, quote, if you lost Wegmans' job, you really can't lose another job, because if that was to happen, you'd really become a burden to your people, because that's going to open you up to more of a situation where you're going to be a lot less marketable to the job world, which nobody wants. And then to the point where it's going to be very difficult for you and all the rest of your people, around you. So situations like that, you got to stay away from. Situations like that, you got to be able to do everything you can to stay away from. So, well, that's all I can think of for now. I think I covered everything that I think is necessary to cover in this situation. If you enjoyed this vlog and this video, be sure to give it a huge thumbs up for sure. Huge thumbs up for sure. Be sure to go down and hit that subscribe button for sure. Be sure to subscribe for sure, and be sure to comment down below. And enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I'll see you in my next vlog, my next video. Peace.